every morning with drive. Being on the grind, know I had to survive. We had to win. Started from the dirt and the rubble. I had to be the needle that was popping your bubble.
Hello and welcome into the Rookie Prospect Profile Series, a Zilla Fantasy Elite production. Today we're going to be looking at wide receiver Ainias Smith within the rookie wide receiver machine learning models. Can Ainias Smith rise from a 5th round draft pick to be a bright shining star in the NFL and in your fantasy squads, or is he going to falter in our fantasy forecasts? Stick around to uncover the verdict from our cutting edge machine learning models, which do 1,000 simulations for each season of the prospect's first 4 years in the NFL. See what it says right now. All right, Ainias Smith was drafted in the 5th round, 152 overall. He comes into the league out of Texas A&M, playing wide receiver out there. Getting into some of his physical attributes, we can tell that he comes in at 5'9", 190 pounds. Not entirely big there. Hand size 8.5 is on the small side, especially for wide receivers. College dominator rating, 30.1% is pretty solid. 20.2 college target share is okay as well. Don't have a 40-yard dash time for him, but he had a breakout age of 19.3, and that's what we're working with here within the machine learning models. I can tell you this is one of the worst profiles in the entire class, so just keep that in mind. Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver Ainias Smith. I know JJ Zacharyson had him as somebody that he's kind of interested in terms of, hey, this guy could carve out a role in year one and kind of hop into the slot there in 3 wide receiver sets. Machine learning model here does not like him as a sleeper, not at all. So let's look at this year one output for Ainias Smith. We see, even though he's the 21st wide receiver off the board in the NFL draft in 2024, his mean and median at 3.88 and 3.80 are the 25th and 26th ranked mean and medians in the class. Maximum output at 9.06 is the 24th best in the class. Looking at the players in their rookie seasons who hit 3.6 to 4 fantasy points per game, which is right around that range of Ainias Smith's mean and median. Javon Wims, Jeff Janis, James Washington, Jamarcus Bradley, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Jalen Marshall, Cam Meredith, Nelson Aguilar, Marquez Callaway, Quez Watkins, Des Fitzpatrick, Michael Clark, Keelan Doss, Brandon Powell. Pretty uninspiring list there, but that's where it's projecting him to do in year one. That maximum output, even at 9.06, probably not super happy if he does that in his rookie year, but he does have some interesting people right around that 9 range. Robert Foster, DeAndre Hopkins, John Brown, Josh Downs last year to 9.24, Michael Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba also last year 8.81 in fantasy points per game. So got some interesting people there at the ceiling outcome, which, Michael Wilson, I'm kind of excited about. Jackson Smith and Jigba could do better. Josh Downs seems like he was a solid player, but again, that's if he reaches his maximum output, pushing 9 fantasy points per game. I don't see that outside of injury with the wide receiver room that they have there in Philadelphia. Let's hop into the season 2 output for Mr. Ainias Smith and see what happens. Do see a little bump up in terms of the mean and median, but his ranks 27th and 27th are going down. So the mean and median 4.69 and 4.66. Maximum output at 10.94 is ranked number 26 overall. The CV at 30.5 means it's fairly confident in this particular result for Mr. Ainias Smith. I'm just going to give you a range of people in that mean and median range of about 4.4 to 5 fantasy points per game in their second season. What does that list look like? Well, that's Ryan Grant, Bryce Butler, DeAnthony Thomas, Johnny Holton, Malik Turner, Ricardo Lewis, Jalen Strong, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Jalen Reagor, Jaron Brown, Steven Sims, Olamide Zaccheaus, Tutu Atwell, Rashard Higgins, Marquise Lee, Justin Hardy, and Paul Richardson. Again, not exactly inspiring for fantasy points per game. As expected, those names aren't going to be particularly great. At 10.94, at his maximum output, we got guys like Drake London in his second year, Dede Westbrook, Dante Moncrief, Mike Williams, Chase Claypool in that particular range. But in terms of the last 11 draft classes, that's barely inside the top 60 players for their second year outcomes. And now this is where it gets extremely interesting. Ainias Smith in year 3 takes a huge leap downwards. You can see this is one of the most confident in terms of these particular projections. You can see the bottom left graph reaching over 100 projections within that bucket that probably is hovering in the like 0.9 to 1 fantasy point per game range, worse than the median. But yeah, it's not liking him. I see the ranks here, say 40 when I made this. I only had 40 people in the actual database. I had forgotten bub means. So currently with bub means in here, these all kind of bump down one rank to 41st in the class. So he is the worst in the class in year 3. Keep that in mind. These are absolutely atrocious numbers. 1.5 fantasy points per game, as you can expect. Not somebody that you're going to want on your fantasy squad. Who was in that range in year 3 that it was even projecting him to hit that range? Let's go look at those. These are the list of names, all in the 1.3 to 1.7 fantasy points per game in their 3rd season. We're getting some repeat names here like Jalen Reagor in the list. Just keep that in mind. But DeAndrew White, if you've ever heard of him, Jawan Winfrey, Corey Coleman, Jeff Smith, Cody Latimer, as I said, Jalen Reagor, Ryan Grant, we've heard his name before as well, Russell Shepard, Devin Street, Justin Watson of the Kansas City Chiefs now, Robert Foster, Mike Strawn, Greg Dortch, Simi Fehoko, Javon Wims, and DeAnthony Thomas. That's the list of players all hovering in the 1.3 to 1.7 fantasy points per game range where it's projecting him to fall. Again, I saw some repeat names here, so it's really saying, hey, this Ainias Smith profile really looks like this. And it's super confident in terms of, hey, these buckets all get spread out kind of evenly in these projections. This is the only profile I'm pretty sure that I've seen hit over 100 fantasy point per game projections in that particular scale on the bottom left. So really confident in terms of his results hitting that. I know the CV at 69.8, that was the worst CV in the entire class, but it's because the standard deviation of 1.1 is almost the exact same as his mean at 1.5. It's just saying there's a wide range of outcomes compared to the relatively low mean and median there, but the number of projections that are happening in that 1 to 1.2 range is over 100 in that bucket, and that's pretty rare that you see anything like that unless the model is super confident in that particular outcome. Usually those are reserved for the veterans who have some NFL numbers to go off of. Those ones are a lot more accurate than these rookie models, and you start seeing some of those ones that it's more confident on, and the vets hit that 100 range in terms of the number of predictions in one particular bucket there. So keep that in mind. His maximum output at 10.35, very significantly above his actual median and mean outcomes there. And just looking at the graph, you can tell there was 4 total predictions that were even above the 6 fantasy points per game range. There just happened to be one at 10.35. So if everything breaks exactly right for this guy and stars align, who can he become in year 3? We're looking at Josh Palmer, Jamison Crowder, Christian Kirk, Sammy Watkins, Dede Westbrook, Devontae Parker, Donovan Peoples-Jones range of territories. In terms of the last 11 draft classes, that ranks roughly in the top 60 fantasy point per game seasons for year 3. So very, very bad outcome there for Ainias Smith in year 3. Getting into year 4, really not much better. Again, pretty confident in terms of the buckets here. It's got him pushing 80. In terms of the number of predictions in that bottom left range, just below his median outcome, so somewhere in the probably 2.25 range. It's pretty confident there. We did have at least one person worse than him going into this. I believe those numbers are now 40th ranked after I added bub means into the database. So 2.6, who the heck hit that in their 4th year? What can we expect Ainias Smith to really become in the NFL if he's even playing at this particular point? Well, the guys that did that in their 4th season, we got Rashard Higgins, Zay Jones, Matt Collins, Van Jefferson, Tevin Jones, Justin Hardy, Jalen Reagor, Steven Sims, and Laviska Shenault. We've seen the Jalen Reagor on here for the last 3 in terms of his median outcomes. So really, if you want to think of him as the next Jalen Reagor, you certainly can. He is a former Eagles draft choice, so maybe they see a lot in terms of Ainias Smith being their next Jalen Reagor. So not exactly an inspiring list of players to become that maximum output, 7.9. That's brutal if you're drafting somebody and he's got a ceiling of below 8 fantasy points per game going into the 4th season in the NFL. Woof. Guys around that particular range: Cam Meredith, Traquan Smith, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Hunter Renfrow, Ryan Grant, Josh Reynolds, and KJ Osborne. So despite what some fantasy analysts may have as a sleeper pick, Ainias Smith, the machine learning model says, hey, I've seen this profile before. It looks a lot like Jalen Reagor, except for that one first year. He looks worse than Jalen Reagor. The rest of the 3 years of his first 4 years in the league look a lot like a really bad Jalen Reagor. So keep that in mind. Hopefully the model here can give you a little bit of additional confidence when you're making these decisions. Maybe avoid Ainias Smith in this particular case. That's going to do it today for today's rookie prospect profile on Ainias Smith. This is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.